HBO puts out some killer content, with Euphoria undoubtedly being high on the list of popularity. The show is visually striking and constantly pushing creative ideas to how they tell their story through cinematography. Its overall look is distinguished by a strong visual atmosphere with very stylized lighting, and for the new season, they've made some unique technical choices that enhance that aesthetic even more. In season 1, the team used Airy Prime DNA lenses and a shallow depth of field to give the image a certain soft and creamy look, but while season 1 was shot digitally, Sam Levinson and Marcel Rev wanted the episodes for season 2 to be shot on film, specifically Kodak Ektachrome, which is a film known for its very fine grain, its contrast, and the fidelity of reproduction of skin tones. Interestingly, the Kodak company then had to convert part of its factory in order to produce enough 35mm film just to get the series done. All that to say, there's a lot more than just the color grade that goes into the look of your image. It's lighting, composition, production design, and so on. But the grade is a very powerful tool in that final look. So in this episode, we're going to use just the grade to see how closely we can recreate the look of Euphoria. Here we have a clip shot in natural light within a mirror recorded in log. To recreate the warm and contrasted film look of Euphoria, we will use a LUT as a starting point that comes with DaVinci Resolve in the Film Looks folder. Our timeline is Rec 709, so we will have to choose a LUT among these three. The suffix D55, D60, and D65 correspond to the color temperature. D55 for 5500 Kelvin and 65 for 6500 Kelvin. The higher this number, the colder the color temperature, and vice versa. So the D55 LUT will give us a warmer rendering than the D65, which is what we're looking for. These LUTs are designed to be used on a Cineon gamma curve, so we first need to convert our image from Alexa log C to Cineon. On my first node, I will apply a color space transform effect. I'll choose Array Alexa in the input color space and log C in input gamma. In output color space, I choose Rec 709 as my timeline. Now I'll add a node and apply the LUT. There is some noise in my image, so I'm going to add a node first and apply some noise reduction. I want to keep the grain but clear out the blue and red noise. To do this, I'll apply 10% chroma noise reduction and 0% luma noise reduction. Next, I want to warm up the image, which I'm going to do with white balance. I'll add a parallel node under my LUT and push the temperature to around 730 and hue around 8 and a bit of color boost to around 10%. We'll also add a little bit of relief to our image by using mid-tone detail at about 40%. And since we are working to replicate the look as closely as possible, we're working off some example images from the show, as you can see here. I have these collected inside of Milanote, which is also today's sponsor. I often use Milanote for story development and as a pre-production tool. It's this great digital wall to slap all of your creative development on. It's easily my favorite place to build out concepts. I can create different boards to stay organized, so I have my active concepts all in one place where I can then separate them by where they are at in the process. And then I can keep building that structure out like folders to stay as organized as I would like. You also have columns here where I can drop in ideas, links for research, or images to drive the tone or give inspiration, or like I'm doing now, I can jump over to Shot Deck here and pull frames from Euphoria to drop right into here and have references for different looks from the show and organize them into columns if I'd like. This is also great for building out boards for wardrobe or the look of your project. I can leave notes on here as well, and my collaborators can reply and leave their own. And you aren't just stuck on desktop since they have a great app as well. But the best part about all this is that you could get started with a free account right now. There is a paid account, which is the one that I'm on, but the free account has great options and is plenty to get you started, so check that out in the notes below. But again, looking at our references here, we can see that in Euphoria, the highlights are relatively warm. So we'll add a node and use the HDR color wheel to control this on our sky, which is very present in the image. By clicking on the target icon, you can preview the area that the wheel will affect too. It's possible to increase or reduce this work area by raising or lowering the left knob. So now I'll push my highlights toward orange-yellow a bit and then reduce the exposure by 5%. I'll also do this with the shadows slightly, warming them up just a little bit. Looking at the midtones in our references, there is a light greenish tint, but on our example here, the midtones are looking teal due to the LUT that we used just before this node. And we can adjust this very easily on a new node using the color warper. Here I'll shift the bar from turquoise to green, and we just want to subtly shift here. Something like this is going to be enough. Another ingredient for the look in Euphoria's first season is the use of something like a Pro Mist filter. This causes a hazy effect and gives a soft, dreamy look to the image. And we could simulate this in post-production post-production with a simple technique in Resolve. First, I'm going to use 2 parallel nodes with a layer mixer output. On the bottom node, I'm going to apply a radial blur effect with a strength of 0.4, which seems solid. And now on the top node, I apply a power window so that I can now control the intensity of the effect. I want it more intense on the sides than in the center of the image, so I'll reverse the mask. Then I'll bind the mask to the bottom node so that it's used for the radial blur. Then in the key tab, I'll pull the output offset around 15 to 20%. And finally, I'm going to change the blending mode of the layer mixer to lighten, and now we are getting a pretty interesting result. But I'm seeing here that the faces are a little dark and desaturated in our image, so now I want to correct all my skin tones. So I'll add a new serial node, and with the qualifier, make your selection, and then make sure that both faces are correctly masked. After that, I'll add a parallel node where we will do the actual correction. Of course, we could do everything on the same node, but it is better to break up your work as much as possible so that you can diagnose problems and make changes more easily as you go. But now I'll link the selection of faces to this node, and with the RGB curve, slightly increase the exposure on the shadows. You could also use a lift color wheel for this if you'd rather. But to finish this off, I'll increase the saturation a little bit, right around 10%. Now, because season 2 of Euphoria is shot on film, the image does have that delicious film grain. To add this into our shot, we're going to use the Film Convert plugin on our last node. I'll set Film Chroma to 0 and Film Luma to around 65%. For this shot, a grain strength of around 65% looks good to me. And there you go, we have a warm, contrasting image with a strong aesthetic, a fine grain, and this nice hazy atmosphere that feels characteristic of Euphoria. Now, if we look through some of the other references, we'll notice the regular use of additional colored lighting, sometimes red, pink, purple, yellow, or even green. And these vivid colors are being used as a storytelling device, echoing or enhancing the emotions of our characters in a visual way. Of course, these colors are done through lighting while filming, but it is possible to simulate them in post-production to some extent. To do this, we're going to tackle this shot here, which was captured in log on the Blackmagic Ursa Mini Pro. First thing that we're going to have to do here is add a node for the noise reduction. We'll do 1.5 in Luma and 5 in Chroma. Then we'll add a second node for the conversion from log to Cineon, and a third node for our Kodak 2383 LUT, which will serve as a starting point to create our look. On my second node, I'm going to apply the color space transform effect, and I configure with Blackmagic Wide Gamma in input color space, Blackmagic Film Gen 4 in input gamma, Rec 709 in output color space, and Cineon Film Log in output gamma. Then I'll apply the Kodak 2383 D55 LUT on the next node. But right now our image is too warm and lacks brightness and contrast, so I'll add a new node just before my Cineon conversion, and in this node I'll play with the RGB curves to balance the image. Then in white balance, I can drastically lower my color temperature to around -1000 and the tint to around -80. Then add a little color boost to accentuate the bright colors and add a bit of mid-tone detail to around 24 to give relief to our image. Now we can simulate colored lighting by using the gradient power windows in Resolve. First, I'll add a new serial node and create a power window from right to left on the first third of the image, like this. And by pressing Shift and H, I can preview my masking area. Now with the HDR color wheels, I'll push some green into the shadows, then I'll add another serial node and repeat the same process on the other side in a slightly lighter way, and then boost the green with the HDR color wheels. Looking at Euphoria again, we see that their colors are pretty vivid, so to head more in that direction, we'll want to increase the saturation of the orange-red on our subject. I'll add a new node here, and with the color warper, I'll move the points corresponding to red and green in order to increase their intensity on the midtones and shadows like we see here. It's perhaps a little too red, so we'll want to recover some of the orange tones, and with the color warper, I'll move a few dots delicately here. You do have to take it easy with the color warper. You can take it too far pretty quickly, but here it's working perfectly, and we are starting to find that Euphoria style and atmosphere. Now we're going to add our effect simulating the Pro Mist filter just like we did in the last shot, and we'll finish it all off again with Film Convert for some grain. This time we only want the grain, so I set Film Chroma and Luma to 0, and I'm going to choose a film size of Super 35 to have a slightly thicker grain this time, and we're done. But that's it. If you are looking for some LUTs for your projects, check out our store at triunedigital.com. We have LUTs, sound effects, music, VFX assets, and more. And of course, take a look at Milanote. Links for all of that in the notes below. And if there's a film you'd like to see us recreate the look for, post a comment down below as well. And until next time, don't forget to write, shoot, edit, repeat.